Hola, clase. ¿Qué tal? Hoy vamos a aprender los mandatos en la forma de nosotros. Podemos usar esta forma para dar sugerencias en una manera educada. En inglés es mismo que let's cuando queremos sugerir una actividad a nuestros amigos. Pues vamos a examinar este tipo nuevo de mandatos. Ok, aquí tenemos algunos ejemplos de mandatos en la forma de nosotros. Vamos a ver, trabajemos juntos. So let's work together. As you can see, nosotros commands are great because we're not just giving commands to other people and bossing them around or telling them what to do. We're including ourselves in the command. And so it comes across as more of a suggestion or a good idea, and it doesn't come across as maybe quite as bossy. In the Bible, we see this too, where we might want to make suggestions to a group of people. Galatas 6:10. This was the verse that we learned this year. So, hagamos bien a todos. Let us do good to everyone. Soltemos los celulares. Miremos los ojos. Let's let go of our cell phones and look at each other's eyes. So a lot of inspirational quotes will use nosotros because we're making a suggestion and including ourselves in that good habit or good thing that we want to start doing. Vamos a la playa. Let's go to the beach. When you make suggestions to your friends, it's really nice to be able to use the nosotros form because you don't want to necessarily be telling other people what you have to do. You want to just make more of a suggestion, like I said, like using that English word or phrase, let's do this. Tomémonos un café. Let's get coffee. So these are just a few examples. Next, we'll look at how to form these. Formamos los mandatos de nosotros en la misma manera que los mandatos formales. Recuerda, hay 3 pasos. Primero, empieza con la forma de yo en el presente. Segundo, subraye la O. Y, por fin, añade la terminación opuesta. Para el verbo hablar, empieza con la forma de yo en el presente, habló, subraye la O y añade la terminación opuesta, hemos, tenemos, hablemos. Para los verbos comer y escribir, we end up with como y escribo in the yo form. We take off the O for both of those. And then the final step, we add the opposite ending, which is amos. So we end up with comamos and escribamos. Remember that there's also some irregular yo forms. So, for example, the verb hacer, when we follow these 3 steps, we go to the yo form. So, hago, because it's irregular in the yo form in the present tense. We take off the O, then we add the opposite ending. So, since it was an ER verb, we add amos. So, we end up with hagamos, right? So, you're always going to have amos or amos endings, depending on whether it's an AR, ER, or IR verb. All right, so in each of our videos, I've always reminded you about knowing the difference between un mandato afirmativo and un mandato negativo, and I'm going to do that again today because it's really important. So here you can see that we form affirmative and negative commands in the same way. So corramos is run, like let's run, and then no corramos is let's not run, all right? And all we have to do to make a negative command is just put a no in front of it, okay? But as you'll see in the next slide, we form or we add our pronouns to our verbs differently for affirmative and negative commands. And so that's why it's important for us to know the difference. All right, so nosotros commands pretty much follow all of the same rules that we've already learned about pronoun placement. So with affirmative commands, all pronouns will be attached to the end of the verb. So contémonos chistes, let's tell each other jokes. Vámonos, let's go. Despertémonos temprano, let's wake ourselves up early. You can see that since all of these are affirmative commands, we have attached the pronouns to the ends of the verbs, okay? And then we counted back 3 vowels and added the accent mark. Notice that we did something different, though, than we've done with our formal and informal commands. We remove the S, okay? So like vamos, we take off that S and then add nos. So we end up with vámonos. Okay, we did that with contemos. We took the S off contemos and then added the nos. Despertemos, and we took off the S and added nos, okay? And so we do that mostly just for the sound of it so that it sounds right, so that the word rolls off of our tongue a little bit easier. But you do need to remember to take that S off. One thing that might help you if you look at the end of your word, you'll see the word monos, M-O-N-O-S, monos, which means monkey in Spanish. It literally has nothing to do with why we do this, but that's one way to make sure that you have it spelled right. All right, it should always end in monos on all of these. With negative commands, all pronouns will come before the verb. So this is the same rule that we learned with formal and informal commands. It's exactly the same with nosotros, nos, slight exceptions or anything. So no nos vayamos, let's not go. No nos contemos chistes, let's not tell each other jokes. No nos despertemos, let's not wake ourselves up early. And so this one's really easy, really straightforward. Whenever you see the no, then the pronouns need to come right after that. So between the no and the verb is where your pronouns go. And yes, there are mandatos irregulares. So again, you're adding these to a long list of irregulars that you already have. But a lot of these verbs, they're always irregular, no matter what tense we're in. And so at least it's not going to be too hard to remember which ones are going to be irregular. So dar becomes demos, estar becomes estemos, saber becomes sepamos, ser becomes seamos. Ir, if it's affirmative, it's vamos, and if it's negative, it's no vayamos. So all the other ones, they're the same regardless of whether it's an affirmative or negative command. Demos, no demos, estemos, no estemos. But for ir, you're telling a group of people that you all want to go somewhere, vamos a la playa. If you don't want to go to the beach, then you would say, no vayamos a la playa. Remember that you also have to deal with cargar zar verbs. And so buscar, you change the C to QU. Jugar, you change the G to GU. Almorzar, you change the Z to C. Notice though, because remember that we're in the nosotros form, we usually don't do stem changers in the nosotros form. So jugar and almorzar don't take their stem changes. Like they did in some of these other command forms that we learned. So we end up with for buscar, busquemos, jugar, juguemos, almorzar, almorcemos. All right, so I feel really bad to be the one to break this to you, but we've always learned the rule that nosotros forms never have a stem changer, and we've pretty much held fast to that rule, Spanish 1, Spanish 2, and so I'm sorry to have to be the one to tell you that there is a funky nosotros form stem changing rule. IR verbs will actually take a stem change in the nosotros form whenever we're doing command forms with these verbs. And so we changed the E to an I and the O to a U. All right. So for example, pedir is an E to I stem changer. And so we changed that E to an I. Pidamos. We still had to take off the IR and add the opposite ending. Amos. Dormir. We changed the O to a U. And then we take off the IR and we add the opposite ending. So dormamos. Again, sorry. I know that this throws a whole wrench into your whole entire thinking that nosotros form will never take a stem change. This is somewhat similar to the preterite stem changers. If you will remember, preterite stem changers do change an E to an I and an O to a U, but at least even in the preterite, they respected the fact that that doesn't happen in the nosotros form. And of course, when we get to the command form with the nosotros form, then they just want to throw that all out the window. But this is something that you need to know and something you need to watch for. It will probably be in multiple choice and things like that. So you more need to be aware of it and be able to pick the right one, not necessarily, actually like write it out yourself. And one more thing, be very careful because AR and ER verbs do not take their stem changers. Their changes. So just like with the cargar zar verbs, remember jugar and almorzar, they don't take a stem change. So this is only with verbs that end in IR, which is also one of the rules that we did in the preterite tense. Only IR verbs take a stem change. Okay, aquí tenemos algunos ejemplos. I don't want to spend a lot of time on this. I won't read over all of these. You can look at these yourself and pause the video, or look back at the PowerPoint. But I do want to point out a couple of the irregulars. So estudiemos para el quiz. This is regular. Let's study for the quiz. We just added the opposite ending. Dormamos un poco más. This is a stem changer, O to U. So let's sleep a little bit more. Busquemos la verdad. Remember, this is a cargar verb, buscar, so we changed the C to a Q, U, before adding the opposite ending. Let's look for the truth. Demos, that one is just a complete irregular verb. Let's give thanks to the Lord. Let's see, let's go down a little bit. Almorcemos, it was cargar verb. We changed the Z to a C. Go on down. Seamos amigos. Let's be friends. That might be something that you would have said to people when you were meeting them in elementary school. That one's an irregular one. Pagar became paguemos. So remember we changed the G to a GU before adding the opposite ending. Paguemos con tarjeta de crédito. Let's pay with the credit card. Empecemos a estudiar. Let's start studying. We changed the Z to a C. Vamos al parque. That's a total irregular verb. Let's go to the park. Pidamos. So we changed the E to an I before adding the opposite ending. That's a stem changer. Pidamos la especialidad de la casa. Let's ask for the house special. So just some examples. You can look at those other ones. But you need to be able to, like, if I gave you sentences like this, you would have to conjugate all of these verbs, knowing whether they're a stem changer, a cargar verb, a total irregular verb, or if they're regular, then you just need to remember that you take off the ending and add the opposite ending. And of course, I guess this one over here reminds you that you do need to be very careful when you go to the yo form, because there's some irregular yo forms in the present tense. So hacer becomes hago. We drop the O, add the opposite ending. So don't forget those first two steps. Of course, the last step, the third step, adding the opposite ending, is really important, but you don't want to forget the first step of going to the yo form in the present tense.